Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another gameplay impressions video, and today we're going to be talking about Etrian Odyssey 2 Untold, the Fafnir Knight for the 3DS. This title was sent to me by Niz America so that I could give it a look and tell you guys my opinions on it. And as you guys are aware, I don't have a particularly reliable method of capturing 3DS footage, so I'll be showing you guys some gameplay and whatever I can scrounge up from the interwebs somewhere here, while I'm telling you guys how I felt about the game and what I've played of it so far. At this point, I believe I've probably put about somewhere between 4 to 5 hours into the game. As you guys are aware, these kinds of JRPGs, they take quite a while for you to actually get through it. I believe this one, you might be able to get through it in about 50 to 60 hours, something along those lines. So these are very early impressions and kind of how I feel with all the bias that you guys know of mine and how I feel in regards to a game like this. So you guys might not be familiar with the Etrian Odyssey depending on your previous experiences with JRPGs and the like, but personally, I actually found it interesting that the very first Etrian Odyssey title that I've played was actually not an Etrian Odyssey title. And you guys are like, what the hell are you talking about? There was a game that I spoke about a while back, which was Persona Q, the Shadow Labyrinth, I believe was the name, or the Maze, Shadow Maze, something along those lines. It was Persona Q. I think you guys will know what game I'm talking about. And that game is essentially, for those of you that aren't aware, a crossover between the Persona universe and the Etrian Odyssey gameplay, which is why I say that the first Etrian Odyssey that I've played was actually not an Etrian Odyssey game. And I quite enjoy that game, by the way. I like that kind of gameplay. So when I started playing through Etrian Odyssey, a lot of the systems were very familiar to me, like, you know, getting into the dungeon and actually walking around through the dungeon and whatnot. It is a first, for those of you that don't know, 'cause I guess I should have mentioned that at the start, it is a first-person dungeon crawler game. You know, the kind of game where you go from square to square and then you turn your character, you move and you explore a dungeon. With the exception that Etrian Odyssey does something that I find really cool, which is you actually map out the dungeon on the lower screen of the 3DS. And I find that to be very satisfying. I don't know why. I've never really been huge into pen and paper. I mean, I've played some Dungeons and Dragons a long time ago, but I was never like really huge into the whole, oh, I'm going to map out this dungeon or not. I just find the experience to be interesting and fulfilling. You're just like, you're going through this dungeon, there's no map, there's no nothing, and as you're going through it, you're going to be able to map it out. And some of you guys are going to say, oh my god, you mean I have to draw the entire dungeon? I mean, that is a big turnoff. And don't worry, because there's options in the game. If you guys go into the options menu, there's multiple options in there, and it allows you to like select different types of mapping so that you can have the game map a big portion of the map for you so that you don't have to do the whole thing. Now, depending on how much of a dedicated fan of the Etrian Odyssey games you are, you might want to do this yourself, or you might want to let the game do a lot of it for you. Personally, I would advise the intermediate way, which is you can actually select it to like mark green on tiles that you've been to, and then you can draw the walls yourself and, you know, leave annotations and stuff. But I find that very fun. Like, you're going through this maze and like you find this point, for instance, at some point I found like this stream of water, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna mark this down, because you can come back there later and you can get healed up. It heals up your hit points as well as your stamina for your party. But on top of that, later on I had a side quest which actually said, I want to get the most crystalline water possible. I was like, oh, I remember this stream that I noted down on my map, and I know exactly where it is, and I'm going to go back there, and I'm going to go get it. So that's the kind of gameplay that you can expect. You're going to be exploring dungeons, you're going to be mapping them out, and then you're going to be returning to the city, turning in quests, doing all that kind of shenanigans. Now, how does the combat work? Naturally, in these kinds of games, your combat is turn-based. So as you are moving through the labyrinth, you will get this indicator which symbolizes how close you are to an enemy encounter. So like, the more you move throughout the labyrinth, the more likely you are to eventually find an enemy. So if you're moving really fast and getting in and out and whatnot, you might not find any enemies. But if you take your while exploring and whatnot, you're going to find a lot of enemies. As a matter of fact, you can even farm enemies this way if you so decide, but you're not forced to do it. I mean, I believe there might be a bit of grind that you are required to do at some point in the game, but I haven't reached that point yet. I've just been progressing until I found this boss that completely annihilated me and my whole party. which was actually frustrating because I was like, oh man, I'm gonna get my character, I'm gonna get this ridiculous ultimate attack, and then the boss, and then just like this huge number appeared, which, I mean, I guess it's all relative depending on where you are in the game, but I was just like, oh hells yeah, I did 400 damage on this boss, which would be enough to like kill 4 of the monsters that I was fighting previously. And then I look at the boss's health and it moved like 2 millimeters, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess I'll leave now because this doesn't seem like it's gonna go my way. So yeah, that was a little bit of an engagement that I had there that was kind of frustrating, and I still don't know exactly how I'm going to get through that, but I went back to town. They gave me a whole bunch of other quests, so I'm going to get started on those and just, work it out that way. But the interesting thing that this game had, now bear in mind, again, like I said, the only other Etrian Odyssey game that I've played was Persona Q. So bear that in mind, because I don't know if this is commonplace with Etrian Odyssey games or not. But this particular game had 2 different modes when you start, which I found interesting. So one of them is the story mode, which is the whole Fafnir Knight thing. Your character is essentially the Fafnir Knight. You play as the Fafnir Knight, and he has this special power, which this is all early on stuff. I'm not giving you guys like major spoilers or anything. These are things that you will run into in the very first hours of the game just to set the plot a little bit. Your character is sent with a friend to escort this lady into a forest. She's supposed to do this special ritual or something, which there's a lot of mystery behind this ritual, so a lot of people don't actually know what this ritual is going to do. She just knows that she has to do it. And as you are going through this ritual, your character like transforms and becomes this friggin' beast for some reason. And that is like the power of the Fafnir Knight. So that is kind of like the story mode. You play this character who can like transform into this beast and just destroy everybody. And then there's another mode that you can play, which I found very interesting, which is they call it the classic mode. And in this classic mode, what you can do is you can actually form a party. And they have all of these systems in place in this game, right? They have a system of classes, they have the dungeon, they have all of this stuff. And so what they do is they just kind of leave you to your own devices. So instead of giving you a story and a narrative to follow through, it's just like a very generic plot if you go into classic mode, which is like, oh, you're just seeking glory and glory and flame. You're just seeking glory and fame in the labyrinth of High Lagarde, or whatever the name is of the place. And your main thing is just progress through the labyrinth as deep as you possibly can, right? I believe they also enable the side quests in this mode, though, so that you can still get some extra EXP and that kind of stuff as you are exploring through the labyrinth. But basically, if you go into classical mode, you can create your own party with all of these systems. Like I said, you have a whole set of classes. Like I said, it was 13 classes. There's the regular melee guy. There's like the knight type guy, which is the protector. He shields your party and whatnot. There's the troubadour, which is kind of like a bard. He kind of just like heals. Not really heals, he buffs your party. There is the nobility, which is like a leader. She buffs your party in different ways. And there's all these classes that you can pick from, and you can really tailor make a group specifically to go into dungeon. And I found that, like I said, I keep saying the word interesting, but I found that to be a really neat way to play the game. So like, say for instance, you've played through the story mode and you're like, you know what, this story is not really grasping me, but I do like the gameplay. You can just like, you know what, I'm going to switch this up to classic mode. I'm going to create my own classes and, decide how my party is going to be filled up and just like go from there. And the game just plays solidly in any way that you play it, either story mode or classic mode. Like the story mode has a lot more exposure, as you guys might be used to from JRPGs. It doesn't have like, how should I put it? It's not too much exposure. Like, you know how sometimes you have those Japanese games that will just like go insane on the amount of details. And it's like every time you go to town, it's like a 1 hour commitment because you're just like going through text and text and text and text and text. This one doesn't really do that. Like, you get a little bit of exposition at the start, but you can see that they're trying to nudge you in the direction of the labyrinth. Like, look, just get to the labyrinth and just start doing your stuff and start learning the systems and whatnot, and just start enjoying the actual gameplay portion of the game. But it does give you the whole narrative thing as well. Just, again, it doesn't overdo it, in my opinion, which is a good thing, because like I said, a lot of these Japanese games kind of tend to overdo it with the narrative. So I was pleasantly surprised at how this worked out. Now, in terms of your party, you can have up to 5 party members from what I've played so far. In story mode, those classes are all pre-made, so you don't get to select the classes that you get. I think I can tell you even the classes of the characters that I found so far, at least, which is you have one nobility class, which is the character that you're supposed to escort. You have a special class, which is the Fafnir Knight, which you can only get in story mode. I believe that is a very specific thing. You can only get the Fafnir class in story mode. You get a protector, which is like a tanky type dude. You get a war magus, which is this character that can heal your party as well as debuff your enemies, and also deal damage. She's like a melee class that also casts spells. And then you also get a regular archer, which is called a survivalist. So these are the classes that you're going to have as you go through, and you can like select their formation, so you can put people in front, put people in back, and that will come into play with the combat system. Like, say, the nobility character, for instance, will be able to buff an entire row of your characters, and then enemies will have special attacks that will affect an entire row, like, say, the front row or the back row, and you will have to react to those attacks as you are going through the game. And again, the combat here is like super deep. You have the elemental weaknesses and strengths that you usually get in these kinds of games. You have buffs for like increasing your defense, your elemental damage, all that kinds of stuff. It's all there. Your typical stuff that you will get from JRPGs, but it just feels super solid. I don't know exactly how to put it, but what was happening to me with this game is like, you know, I just want to play enough so that I can put my opinions out there, because I actually like what I've seen so far, and I want to make sure that people give this game its fair shake. So, but as I was playing, I was like, oh man, but let me see what happens next. You know, I started getting that, and I'm like, oh man, but wait, if I put points into this skill, because again, there's lots of customization for your characters. If I put points into this skill, then I'll gain access to this passive skill that will be able to like heal my party as I'm exploring the labyrinth, which is really useful. And then I can put these points into my character, and I have this special attack that doesn't even consume stamina. That's really good. I want to be able to do that attack. And then I put points in here. You know, that's kind of how I started getting really into it. Like, I was not expecting to get it as much into this game as I have. In case you guys are wondering, I'm playing through the story mode. I played a little bit of classic just to kind of feel things out. And it's interesting because like I was going through the village just now, and they were like, oh, we're opening this cafe thing, and we want you to go get like ingredients from the labyrinth so that we can like make these special dishes, and they will buff your party and stuff. And then as I got to the cafe, because they were giving me these quests, they were oh yeah, why don't you name the cafe? And I was like, oh man, I'm just like Con Cafe. So there's like this restaurant in the village which is just like Con Cafe. You go in there and you can eat and stuff and buff your party, and you know, that kind of thing. I know that's something super minor. It's barely even mentioned, right? It's just like, oh, fine, you name the cafe or whatever. You also name your guild, which is like your group of friends and whatnot, and you name your character naturally. There's not a ton of voice acting. There's a little bit of voice acting. As a matter of fact, I want to say that I've heard the voice actor who plays the voices for the main character. I want to say that I've heard him in another game, but I couldn't quite place where, which was somewhat frustrating because I'm pretty sure I heard his voice somewhere else, and I can't remember where it was. But yeah, again, not a ton of voice acting. There's also something that I found pretty cool, which was as I was meddling through the options just to see the whole map options thing, to see how much the auto map would work and whatnot. I also came across this option to change the type of music that you're getting in the game. So like you have the game by default, I think, comes with classical mode, which is like, I think, some kind of old Etrian Odyssey, which feels a lot more, how should I put it? Like, you know, 8-bit, not 8-bit though, like more like 16-bit kind of soundtrack. And then there's another one which is actually like piano and guitar and that kind of stuff. And you can switch between the two. And I thought that was cool because there's a couple of sounds in there that brought me some nostalgia. Like whenever you kill a monster, like there's like this 8-bit like explosion sound. And I know that I'm getting into a lot of detail here, but I just found that to be kind of cool. But yeah, that is Etrian Odyssey 2 Untold, the Fafnir Knight. Hopefully you guys got a pretty good idea of what the game's about. Like I said, it's about dungeon crawling, exploration, and just like, you know, killing stuff, getting back to town, buying better loot, investing into going back into the labyrinth and going deeper, or in this case, higher. The labyrinth is supposed at the base of the Yggdrasil tree. I don't know exactly how to pronounce that particular tree. And you keep going up and up and up and up as you progress through the labyrinth. Again, I've just put a couple of hours into it. This is very first impressions. But I like it. I like what I've played so far, and if it seems like you guys like these kinds of games, these first-person dungeon crawlers, you should give this one a chance. There is one thing, though, that I have to say I kind of like more in Persona Q than in this one, which is Persona Q, like, even though it did the whole Etrian Odyssey thing, whenever I was doing attacks, you would actually see, like, your character would pop up on screen and, like, it would show him doing, like, some animation attacking the monsters. And I know that this is a very minor detail, like, most people don't care about this at all, but on a personal level, that would have made the game so much better for me. You know, just seeing your characters go up in there and just, like, a little animation for slashing attacks. It doesn't even have to connect with the monsters. Just show me the characters doing a little slashy animation type of deal. That would have gone a long way for me on a personal level. Again, I don't know about you guys, but I like seeing my characters on screen. And basically the only thing you have to relate with your characters on this game is like their portraits as they're having conversations and stuff like that. They have some pretty cool portraits. The 3D effect seems to be working fine. I can't say that it was particularly spectacular, but it was adequate. Let's put it like that. There are some times where I see games, you know, where they use the 3D effect in a really remarkable way. In this case, it just looks good. There's not a whole lot really to say there. The environments looked pretty cool as well. The graphics were very detailed. I'm not sure if this might be a case of the new 3DS having more detailed textures than the old 3DS, because I know that there's a couple of games that take advantage of the more powerful processing on new 3DS. I don't know if that's the case or not, because I don't have like an old 3DS to compare those graphics to. But I can say the game looked pretty good. It had an animation at the very start, you know, like your typical JRPG animation type of deal. But I haven't seen any more of that kind of animation since. So I don't know if that's a thing that they have more of further down the line or not. But again, lots of content in there from what I've seen so far. A lot of customization on these characters. Just seems like a really fun game if you enjoy first-person dungeon crawling. Again, take a look at the footage that should be going somewhere in here. Should give you an idea of what it looks like and how you feel. And depending on how you feel about those games, if it looks like you would like it, then I would highly advise you to check it out. Thank you very much for watching. Leave me all the comments, feedback, all that kinds of good stuff in the comment section below. And I'll see you in the next one.